everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Spilling the Tea on GovCon. I'm Teresa Moon, Director of Business Development for Parabolis. We provide a better financial partnership for government contractors that includes a line of credit to fund your growth. The purpose of this podcast is to assist small businesses with success in the federal marketplace by introducing you to industry experts and resources that you may not otherwise know about. Today's guest is my friend, Leslie Faircloth, Deputy Director of Small Business Programs for NAWCTSD, which is a mouthful, and that stands for Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division. And it's based right here in my hometown of Orlando. She's widely known here, though, in town as the Navy Small Business Jedi Master, and we are so proud to welcome her to our show today. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks, Teresa. I appreciate that wonderful intro.
Absolutely. I've been very excited to have you on the program for a lot of reasons. I talk about the ability that NAWCTSD has really led the way in government contracting for engaging more intimately with small businesses and giving them not only access to your missions in advance, but sharing tips of how to best engage so that they can set themselves up for success. And so with that, given that a lot of people have heard me talk about the Orlando market and how Team Orlando has been so successful with that interaction with small businesses. So having you on is incredible. You are involved in a lot of activities here in Orlando that outreach into the United States across the states. And so it was important for me to get insight from you of what NAWCTSD is up to, chatting with our audience about how they can engage more efficiently with you, and then just letting them get to know you a little bit. It's great to see people who aren't afraid to talk to people. That's what we try to do here, is break down some barriers and build some relationships. And so for those that are listening to us, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the details of your experience and expertise within government contracting, and a little bit, I know it's a big widespread, but a little bit of the mission of NAWCTSD.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit of background on me. I've been in the industry, and by the industry, I mean in the defense industry in some form or fashion for the past 25 years, working specifically in the modeling and simulation ecosystem, right? So I have a very strong contracting background. I used to be a contracting officer for several years. And so I've worked a lot of multi-million-dollar, highly complex acquisitions. And so when I took this role as the small business deputy for NAWCTSD, I found that contracting background and that contracting knowledge and all of the tools that I gained there, and the tools that I gained in working in those complex programs has really, really equipped me pretty well to help identify certain pain points, both within industry and government, and to, kind of be the voice of reason, I guess. In some ways, when I'm working with smalls, I know that they do face a lot of barriers, and I've seen them firsthand. So I understand that the barriers exist. And then I also take that knowledge and that input that I get from industry, and I'm feeding that back to my internal command, right? I'm working with my internal program teams to say, hey, these are the impacts to small business of, what the government is doing. And maybe here are some steps that we can take to remove some of these roadblocks, or at least head in the right direction, because some of the roadblocks are very, very difficult to overcome, but we're chipping away at it. Now, the mission of Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division, or NAWCTSD, as we like to call ourselves, it's really all about training, military training and readiness, and getting that into the hands of the warfighters that need it immediately, right? And so we need to move faster, we need to move smarter, and we're looking to train and equip, the sailors and Marines that are out there fighting for us, and we need them to come home. So the training is paramount.
Mhm.
And that is the primary focus of the mission, is making sure that that training lands in the right hands at the right time.
Which that whole real-time aspect of it really lends itself to relying on the constant technology output that's coming out of a lot of different communities. We're fortunate here in Orlando because we are, and I talk about it all the time, we are the simulation capital of the world. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of businesses here that move here so that they can support that overall mission that Team Orlando jointly stands behind in general. But you guys in particular, focus on the Department of Navy's objectives within that realm as well. And so I want to chat in detail with our listeners about insight that you can provide about doing business with NAWCTSD and different ways that, to your point, we can break down some of those barriers to entry, just because it's an overlying concept of you don't know what you don't know until you know. And rather than, shooting blanks or, throwing spaghetti against the wall, there is a process that you can follow that can help expedite your ability to get in front of the right people who need to hear about the technologies and proficiencies that are necessary for certain opportunities. And you guys are great with putting your opportunities out. So if people know how to engage, then they can get themselves to the top of the heap a lot faster. And so when we chatted in doing this podcast together, some of the insight drove where we were going to go with this. And so I want to jump right in and talk about the importance of teaming for small businesses, especially when they're looking to break into doing business with the Department of Navy.
Oh my gosh. Yes. This is such an important topic because, I am approached by hundreds of small businesses every year to kind of help learn the ropes before the company is up front and center and the responsible prime. Right. So we want to crawl, walk, run, not jump straight to the running and then have, things go badly, because that doesn't look good for anyone. And particularly it's hard on small businesses when things go wrong, because unfortunately there is a prevailing mindset out there that if there's a negative experience with a small business, there's kind of that broad brush that person paints to say, oh, I had a bad experience with a small business, so all small businesses scare me. Well, we all know that is just not true. So we want to make sure that companies that are looking to do business with us are finding ways to do that usually first with a teaming arrangement. So typically that is subcontracting, but there are different ways for companies to team, right? So it could be, like I said, a sub to an existing prime, which that prime could be a large business, or it could be a small business as well. We have lots and lots of small businesses who are primes in our portfolio, and they're very mature and they're very experienced, and they're great as potential partners. You can also take advantage of the mentor protege programs that are available. Two primary mentor protege programs. One is with the Department of Defense. That's one way to enter a mentor protege. And then another is the Small Business Administration's mentor protege. And so that is another way to find those, for a small business, to find those mentors, either in a large or an experienced small prime, to figure out, like, okay, great, I'm here to bring this value to the opportunity, filling maybe a niche requirement, and then learning the ropes along the way. And in a mentor agreement, of course, there's a formal agreement that goes behind that to talk about what specifically that protege firm or the small business is looking to do to help them grow and help them mature so that they can stand on their own 2 feet as a prime contractor at some point in the future. So you don't have to enter into a mentor protege, but there's also other teaming arrangements, strategic partnerships that are maybe not so formal. I see that all the time. And that's usually the starting point before you move to a mentor protege. So maybe I should have talked about that first. But just a strategic partnership is important, because almost no project that we have is performed by a single contractor. They're almost all bringing a team of expertise to the plate. I didn't talk about joint ventures, but joint ventures are another way or another form of teaming. It's just a more formal arrangement. So sometimes joint ventures can be between two small businesses. Sometimes the joint venture could be between a small and a large that are parties to one of these SBA mentor protege programs. So those are some really key ways for small businesses to is through these partnerships.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note what you said in terms of, trying to run before you crawl. What we see a lot is that a lot of what you are building in terms of your ability to perform in the industry is based off of your past performance. And if you try to bite off more than you can chew, both from capability standpoint and from our side of things, ability to financially fulfill the obligations of a contract, that can really set you back because number one, we all know it's a small industry and it's a small world. It's a huge industry, small world, and word travels fast. So if someone has a bad experience with you based off of your inability to complete your obligation to whatever capacity is necessary, then that can infringe your ability to engage not only with that specific agency or department again, but with those businesses again that have brought you in. And so past performance is a huge driving factor of your ability to gain more work after the fact. So doing so in increments that allow you to show is important, and not jumping in too quickly so that you show your lack of understanding of what it takes to solidify across the board a prime opportunity might allot for more expenditures than you had originally understood. And because you don't have a lot of experience with it. So we see a lot of these great businesses, especially technology-based businesses that are a one-man show. They get a contract and they have to do the proverbial butts and seats and don't recognize how much it costs for these hires that have really high quality levels of competency to perform on the mission. And so it's super important. It isn't just that it's not a barrier of keeping you from growing at the rate that you want to. It's just being able to show your work, like in a long division math problem, right? They want you to show all your work underneath it. It's important to be able to show all of that.
It is, especially when, we're looking at it from our perspective and we're trying to manage risk, right? So that if you can show, like you said, if you can show the work, that helps us to identify, or at least identify that you thought about, you've done this, and in our minds, that could be a risk reducer.
Absolutely. So speaking of risk reducers and ways to take what you've said in this first question and build on it, what is a competitive? It's something we hear a lot in our industry. So let's talk about what it is exactly and how they can be leveraged to help generate socio-economic small business set-asides, because this barrier to entry that we started our conversation with is big, and it's not necessarily due to any type of diversity or excluding people based off of certain, certification levels and things like that. But there are ways that you can use this strategically to make it work to your benefit. And so let's chat about that a bit.
Yeah. I love this topic. And it's funny because competitive, I don't know that that's really in the Webster's dictionary, but it is definitely in our lexicon.
Absolutely.
So a competitive is essentially a business that can be both your competitor in your market, or they could be a teaming partner. And it's usually because of their socioeconomic status. So I break it down, and they're really essentially two ways. And like I just said, it's either they're competing against you or they're competing as your partner. So let's talk first, I guess, about them helping to influence maybe a set-aside decision. So let's say we have a requirement for curriculum development, and we're doing our market research. We post it out, maybe an RFI, maybe a source is sought, and we're looking for sources. We get responses from small businesses, and let's say we get responses from 2 service disabled veteran owned small businesses. And let's say we've identified that those are both capable and qualified. And so if we find that meets the rule of 2, right? So if we find 2 or more of that type of a socioeconomic representation in our market research, then we first have to consider setting it aside. So in this example, we've got 2 SDVOSBs. Logically, we could say, okay, contracting officer, this is a great target for us to set aside for competition among SDVOSBs. Well, if I only know of 1, I'm not meeting the rule of 2. So if you are in this fictional scenario, if you're an SDVOSB that is in the curriculum development space, and you know your partner, you've got a company that you know of that is also capable, and they also have an SDVOSB certification, a phone call to say, hey, did you notice that this is coming out? Would love to either partner with you, or maybe we could influence the set aside decision. So rallying those that are in the similar socioeconomic category can help influence the set aside decision, whether that's small business overall, or if it's one of the socioeconomic categories within the small business. So that's one way. It help if you get the word out to others that are in a similar socioeconomic category, and they provide those responses, it really can influence the decision that we make for set-asides. So I always encourage, don't be shy. If you think, well, I don't want to tell my competitor about it. What if somehow they missed it and maybe they're not going to bid? Well, then potentially you're going to open yourself up to competing against a larger pool of companies. Right. So if you want to narrow it down and where we're only fishing out of a pond this big versus this big, your probability of win goes up. So,
there's plenty of work in those opportunities for everyone too. So maybe just parceling out certain portions, certain proficiencies within the requirement to your competitor so that you can position yourselves as being able to fulfill a requirement for an SDVOSB. I think that's great. And given, my motivation and initiative to support veteran-owned businesses and gaining more of those types of set-asides, I think this is great because we have a big following in our audience that fit that criteria. So this is great information for them in case they hadn't heard it before. I hope it's encouraging them to look towards people within their own industry because there's a lot they can learn from each other regardless. So much. I think just letting down your guard a little bit and learning more, there's probably more differences than there are likenesses to most of these companies as well. So being able to, benefit from locking arms together, I think is huge. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And it's not something that we talk about a lot. So I think this is great for offering a different viewpoint and a different way to go after opportunities. So thank you for bringing this to our listenership. This is huge.
Yeah. And the other piece of that, where you're actually bringing that competitor on as a team member for purposes of going after a particular requirement, what that does. So most of your small business listeners are probably familiar with the requirement for limitations on subcontracting. It's a contract clause that gets included in all small business set-asides. And if your listeners are not aware of this, they're going to want to get really smart on it because this can cause compliance issues and it's all bad. So we want to understand it, right? So essentially what limitations on subcontracting clause is, it basically is a requirement that the prime contractor, when we have a small business set aside or socioeconomic set aside, the prime contractor has to perform at least half of the effort. So it's like some people call it the 50% rule. So what a competitor can do is they can fulfill a role which is defined in acquisition regs as similarly situated entities. So what a similarly situated entity is if we've got a small business set aside and you're a small business prime, any other small business that you're subcontracting to is a similarly situated entity.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say the prime can only do 25%, but they find another similarly situated entity that they can pull on to do the other 25%. Together, they meet the rule on limitations on subcontracting. And that is something that has only come about in the past couple of years. So it is still relatively new. Not everybody is aware of this. Some people are still operating under the old rules, which similarly situated entities weren't a thing.
Right.
That didn't exist. Now it does. And so that is really highlighting the importance of teaming with those competimates.
Right, exactly. And I think it's important to do your homework and find and put together a strategy that makes sense so that you don't position yourself to just win. You want to be able to perform, because going back to our points earlier, that past performance is going to be key. And if you exclude yourself from it because you didn't follow the rules, then that's going to reflect poorly on you in the long run, because that word's going to travel fast. And your ability to get back in and try that all over again is going to be tarnished because of an error. And hey, everybody makes mistakes, but this is why business owners need to share with each other what their good and bad experiences have been, so that other businesses don't make the same, And I think that the key points that you just made there are giving reference to really understanding what the regulations are on both sides of that, with both the allocation of the time delegated out and the ability to earn a contract award based off of your certification or any other type of barrier that has been opened for you to get in on those contract opportunities. So I love that. And speaking of strategy, you are going to address something that we talk about a lot here. And this industry is all about relationships, and something that doesn't promote good relationship rapport is a typical sales tactic called cold calling. And so you are not the first person to bring this to my attention, but I think it's one of the first times that we're setting some time aside to talk about it. So why don't you share with our audience why cold calling is not going to lead to a contract award?
Oh my gosh, yes. I have so much firsthand experience with this, both in my current role and in my previous role as a contracting officer. So, as you mentioned, this is really about relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and trust. So, when you're looking to initiate or get your foot in the door to do business with any government entity or business entity for that matter, well, first of all, you really need to do your homework and know who you're marketing to.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you're selling, I might not be buying, right? I can't tell you how many times I still receive cold calls. I did just yesterday from folks who are selling cleaning supplies and like office supplies. Like, NAWCTSD doesn't, that's not in our mission. That's not what we're buying, right? So you might want to go speak to DLA or someone, but that's not what we're buying. So you're wasting your time and wasting my time or the time of whoever else is on the other end of the phone. So you've got to do your homework, right? So a lot of times that cold calling is they didn't do their homework and they're barking up the wrong tree.
Right.
Okay. But let's say they did do their homework. And they are selling maybe what I'm buying. Well, okay, it's fine to, reach out, but I wouldn't I don't recommend cold calling and saying, well, what kind of contracts do you have for me? Okay. If we don't know each other, we need to get to know each other. We need to understand one another and build trust. There's so much to understand about the ecosystem that we operate in. There are so many things that companies really need to get smart on. And it's not something that I can just hand them, here's an info sheet, go get smart. I mean, yeah, right. I do have an info sheet. They can do a little bit of homework that way. But really showing up to events and learning more about who's in the space, what are the needs, right? Just really establishing and putting in your time to understand what the needs are, educating yourself. So building that trust takes time and effort. and fostering those strategic partnerships within the government and with the partners, the industry partners that we are doing business with, is where you start. You don't just cold call and expect, oh, well, fabulous. You have an 8A certification. Great. I got a contract award waiting for you. No, I don't. Right. I want to make sure that we know each other and we have that trust, and I understand your capabilities and you understand my needs.
Right.
So cold calling is a terrible method for trying to do business with the government.
Absolutely. And it just doesn't set up good rapport. I think anyone that's been in sales, people might be good at it. I was good at cold calling, but I never enjoyed it because nobody is excited to hear from you if they have no idea who you are. So exactly. It's awkward, and it doesn't present you an avenue to show what you really do best because someone wasn't expecting to hear from you. So it's better if it's pitched through a warm introduction from someone else, or you've already met them on the exhibit hall floor and you have something that you can harken back to of a conversation that you've had or a presentation that you viewed. It's just all of those things that kind of lighten the mood with it, because we're all people and we all have objectives. And if we don't know where those objectives can meet to benefit both sides, then it's just a unbeneficial conversation across the board for everyone. It's a waste of time for the person calling, and an even bigger waste and awkward moment for the person who answered the phone. It's probably half the reason why people have, reliance on caller ID. I very rarely answer my phone if I don't know who it is that's calling me. I'd rather have to return your call after a voicemail. And I self-protested, I can talk to a lamppost. But if I'm busy during the day, I can't just take your call. And then if I call you and you know nothing about what I do and why you should be calling me, it's one of those things. And I mean, you're a great person, and you're very humble and very kind. I've seen you interact with people on the exhibit hall floor after presentations. You're not unapproachable. So it opens it up. You are very unique in that setting, because a lot of times there's a lot of power that comes into a role that people think is going to dictate whether or not they get a seat at the table. And you and your team, Diana Teal, and the commander, and I mean, you guys are very gentle. It's a gentle interaction, and so nobody's ever been disrespectful. I've been on an exhibit hall floor and watched people be ripped to shreds by these small business directors from large primes and other agencies, and that's not the right approach. But I get it. Once you've had that interaction too many times and people just haven't done their homework, you get sick of it. It's like one of those, like, I don't have time for this. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's just the way it is, right?
It's true. And resources, it's a real thing, right? So I have a lot of smalls that are interested in talking to me, and I am more than willing to talk, but I have a long line, right? Yeah. So I, like you, if I don't recognize the number, I am going to send it to voicemail, because if I constantly answered my phone, I would never achieve any other goal at work. Yep. So, for those of you out there who have tried to reach out to me and I still haven't gotten back to you, you're still on my list, and I will get there. Right. But yeah, so patience is appreciated. But the great thing about NAWCTSD and Team Orlando in general is that you don't necessarily have to wait to talk to me to start getting educated about how to do business with us, because we offer so many opportunities to interact with us, so many events. I know you across the screen, there's been some banners running talking about upcoming events, our procurement acquisition lead time, or PALT event, as you may hear us call it, is a hybrid event that we host every other month. And we are basically going over our acquisition forecast. We're updating industry on, what has changed, what's new, what's different, what's been delayed, what's been accelerated, what maybe didn't get funded. It's so much information that is available And all you really have to do, if you can't make it in person, you can join us on Zoom. And
Right.
guess what? You can ask questions and you will get answers. It's really awesome. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback, and we've been continually improving or trying to improve our communication. And we really do listen to industry and try to make it easy. That's just one of the events, right? But if you follow me on LinkedIn, or if you follow NAWCTSD on LinkedIn, also Central Florida Tech Grove, those are wonderful resources to find out more about the events that are happening. You can also visit the Central Florida Tech Grove website. They're going to be updating it in a couple of weeks to update their events. But there are so many opportunities. You really do not need to cold call.
Right.
You really don't.
And that's what I think is important to note. It's not that you wouldn't like to be able to engage with everyone and strike up a conversation. It's just the resources are there. And if they just do a little bit of searching, the access to it is amazing. And, like I started the show by saying, NAWCTSD, Team Orlando, Central Florida Tech Bridge, everyone is really unified in the sense of opening it up to allowing people to engage, but also giving them the information that they need to engage in an appropriate and informed manner. And so I have loved being able to get to know you. I've loved being able to engage with your team and other members of Team Orlando to really share with the rest of the federal contracting community of the right way to do things. And so I commend you all on being, relationship driven and open and honest and just guiding the way for other agencies to follow your suit. And you're doing a great job. And I can't say enough. So I hope everyone takes your advice and follows you on LinkedIn and follows the other resources that we referred to as well. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And I hope that we'll make some time in the near future to have you back again.
I would love that. And thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and address everybody, and look forward to more.
Awesome. I'm going to hold you to it. So thank you for saying that. I'll play this back for you in case you forget.
I won't forget. I promise.
Okay, awesome. But thank you again for sharing your time and your expertise. I encourage everyone to connect, like I said, with Leslie and NAWCTSD on LinkedIn and follow her to gain access to some amazing insight and details on upcoming opportunities and events they are attending in the year ahead. If you like what you heard today, we also encourage you to check out our YouTube channel by the same name, where you can find our archives and check out all of our past podcasts. This year, we are committed to continuing to bring you the best thought leaders and experts to assist in making 2023 your best year yet. And as always, we appreciate you being here. I'm Teresa Moon, and this is Spilling the Tea on GovCon. Have a great day.